What's up guys, welcome back to another guide. Today we're going to be looking at PvP, a proxy oracle build into Blink, and we're going to be looking at three variations. The first variation we'll be looking at is a standard macro game, when the opponent opens Sentry Stalker. The second variation will be a Stalker Stalker or Adept Adept into Nexus opening, and the final one we'll see what to do in case our opponent proxies himself. So let's get started. Now, PvP at the moment is a rather big proxy fest, and I wanted to make a macro guide, but it's very difficult to macro in PvP if you open in the most standard way or in a reactive way. I think the best way to open in PvP is to just be aggressive at the start and from there on out transition into a macro game. So that's what we're going to be doing. We'll be opening up with just a standard 16 gate pylon at the ramp. Double gases at 17 and 18. Second gate at 19 supply. Second chrono boost on our probes. And we scout after our second gate. So at this point, whenever our second gas finishes, we want to have 15 workers on our main base on minerals. So build a cybercore at 21. And from this point on, 15 workers on minerals until both of our gases are filled. After our gate scout, well, we don't really scout, but after we send our probe out after the gateway, we proxy our second pylon on the map at 22 supply. Try to do this before your cybercore is over 18 seconds. A pylon takes 18 seconds and a cybercore 36 seconds. So if you build it halfway, you should be completely fine. Pick a good location for it. This can really be, there's a lot of good locations, but try, especially with a Stargate, try for it to not be too close, so you don't want it here, because it's a very short distance for him and he can unpower that too easily with, for example, two Stalkers. This could be a good location, this could be a location, even here's a good location, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine. Even here, like, you don't have to be too close with Proxy Stargate as long as it's proxied somewhere on the map. It's difficult for him to find, and I wouldn't suggest over here, but in theory even that is possible. So we get our pylon on the map, and once our cybercore finishes at around 2 minutes, 2:02, we immediately start our Stargate. Now, please notice that we start our Stargate before we get any units and before we get warp gate. Now our opponent will be able to scout that, so he should know that we have something proxied. Now the moment we can afford it, we build a Stalker, and then we can do two things. We can fake building a Zealot and get warp gate, or we can just build a Stalker and then get warp gate after. In this case I just build a Stalker, but if you want to trick your opponent a little bit and show that you're getting fast warp gate, you can fake a Zealot, get warp gate, cancel that Zealot once you have 50 extra gas, and then start a Stalker again. After you build your Stargate, you scout with your probe, you go to your opponent's main base, because you want to figure out exactly what you're doing. Or what he's doing, I'm sorry. So usually you see two gates, and around 2:30 you will see either Sentry Stalker pop, Stalker Stalker, or Adept Adept. Now this scenario we'll be looking at Sentry Stalker. So we imagine we see a Sentry Stalker with our probe. Maybe we can keep it alive, maybe we can't. Doesn't matter too much. After we get our Stalker Stalker, we get a pylon or natural. We slightly continue probe production, but you don't have to do that. You can also just go up to 17 workers or just stay on 16 workers on your main base. And then continue unit production after you push away his scout. In that way it's harder for him to know what you're doing. It can look very similar to a robo proxy in that case. Now it looks less like a robo proxy because you're building some extra workers, but of course that can also be faked. So you want to keep your opponent in the dark a little bit, what kind of proxy you're doing. Now, after our two Stalkers and our warp gate has started, our probe scouted Sentry Stalker, we will be going into an Oracle, and we have one chrono boost ready for that one and one chrono boost ready for our next Oracle. So we immediately chrono boost our Oracle. Once we have 400 minerals, as we scouted Sentry Stalker, we're expecting macro. We will be throwing down our Nexus. We won't be building any extra Stalkers yet, and we'll get another pylon. And we continue worker production. Now, the moment the first Oracle finishes, we start our second Oracle, we chrono boost it. And your oracle should arrive somewhere between 320 and 335, depending on where you proxy it. If you proxy it here, if you proxy it here, it's going to be in the base faster. You try to target the workers, and of course try to keep your oracle alive is important. Then you just go out. Meanwhile, before we build any new units, we start our Twilight Council.
The enemy has discovered us.
And we continue pro production all the way through. We get a forge also before our warp gate finishes. And I like to get, personally, I like to get a battery in my natural as well. Once I can afford it after the forge, just for safety. Even though most of the time when your opponent plays Sentry Stalker, you don't really need it because they don't push out across the map. It's nice to have in case they, they decide to walk across the map with 6-7 units. If you don't have a battery, you might take a lot of damage or die. If you do have a battery, you just survive and he will look silly, losing all of his workers to these two oracles. Now, the goal with these two oracles is, of course, to try to do as much probe damage as possible. They also are your source of detection for a little while, until you get a robo out with this build. And on top of that, they're also your counter attack, basically. So whenever you see him move on the map, you go in with the oracles. You don't want to lose these oracles. Keeping them alive always is the highest priority. If you can get 2 probes, but you lose an oracle for it, most of the time that's not worth it. As oracles stay kind of relevant all throughout the game. They always force units to be in mineral lines. They'll force out cannons. And they have stasis traps, so they're good in defense as well. They have detection, they give you map control. It's an all-around very good unit, so try to keep those alive. Now, once our Twilight finishes, we start Blink, we start warping in a couple of Stalkers. Throw 1 or 2 Chrono Boosts on the Blink, not too many. You don't need to rush it out, as we're not really doing an aggressive Blink build. It's a macro Blink build order. It's just to make sure that we're not gonna get Immortal dropped or anything of the sort. It will give us some map control later on in the game, which is nice, of course. But it's not gonna be an all-in. We're taking our gases, we're getting our +1. We go up to 4 gates. After we go up to 4 gates, and we have maximal saturation on our natural as well, which means 44 to 45 probes total, 16 workers on minerals, 3 workers in gas. Same in the main, of course, so that's 44 workers and 1 extra probe perhaps to build the Nexus. We'll go into a Nexus after 4 gates already. Now, at this point, we usually also move out with 8 Stalkers. In case he opens Phoenix, you want to get more Stalkers. I'll have more on that scenario later, but in case of there's no Phoenix, just 8 Stalkers is fine. What I like to do before I move out is I check with my oracles all around the map to make sure there's no adepts or proxy pylons on the map, so he can't run by with 2 adepts and kill all my workers as I'm moving out. We're not going to be aggressive with these, we're just getting map control with these Stalkers. We just want to know what our opponent is doing. We stay here. If he's getting a third, perhaps we can blink in the main. We can maybe pick up a sentry at the front if he doesn't have a battery. We can maybe activate the Immortal Barrier. Who knows? It's very important, though, to not lose these. Try to not fight with these directly. They were great in combination with oracles. You can revelate the army, see where he's moving. Sometimes you can even revelate an observer, perhaps snipe that. And oracles also give you high ground vision to blink into the main. So if you see all of his army is here, perhaps you can blink in here and snipe a pylon. But once again, just like with the oracles, it's very important to not lose these Stalkers. These are your lifeline in this game. And if you lose them, well, your lifeline is gone. That's not very good. At home, after Blink finishes, we start Charge and a Twilight Council, and we go up to 50 probes total. We don't get more than 50 probes, as our third base is already rather early, which is a little bit greedy. So after 50 probes, we start adding extra gateways, and we go up to 8 gateways. Continue forge production. Now, all we do here is we just wait until we see a third base, until we see our opponent resume pro production. If we don't see pro production from our opponent or a third base, we're just going to stay on 50 workers. But if we see more workers from him and we don't have a timing to kill, perhaps we'll add a couple of extra probes. We get our 5th and 6th gases. But for now, as long as there's no third base, we don't go over 50 probes. And as you can see, this build also sets us up for a good +2 timing. So after we get all of our gates, after we get our +2 started, we get our robotics facility. Finally, I'm just kind of blinking around. And this will set us up for a +2 timing as well. So if you believe that when your +2 finishes, you have a strong enough army to kill your opponent, you should go and do that. If you don't believe so and you think it will be a longer game, try to do some damage with your stalkers, perhaps get a prism out on the map and try to harass a little bit with some zealots in there, get your extra gases and just play a macro game from there. But a lot of the time if you play this build, your opponent will attack into you. If you see no third base, what you do is you just add a lot of you just go Zealot, Zealot, Stalker, Archon. Well, you don't get more than those 8 Stalkers, but so you just keep adding Zealots and Archons, maybe a Sentry, maybe an Immortal, and just add a lot of batteries at your third base. If you have any energy left over on your Oracles, add some Stasis Wards as well defensively, and you should be fine against most pushes. Now, don't forget, a lot of the time your initial Oracles will do a lot of damage, but even if they don't do a lot of damage, you're still in a good position. You have good economy as your Nexus is very fast, you have map control, and your third base is going to be way earlier than your opponent. Now, you see how quickly my army is growing at this point, and it will really set us up for a nice +2 push. If we just get the Prism, I'm killing my opponent because he's an easy AI, he GG's out, so that's kind of how you want to play this build into the mid game. Depending on your lead, sometimes you can kill, sometimes perhaps you need to be a little more defensive, but you have very good tools to deal with drops in Blink Stalkers. You have good map control, you have early pressure, early damage with the Proxy Oracle, and you have a fast third base, so good economy as well. This is one of the most complete builds that there is, and I think it's a very strong one. Now imagine we're at this point in the game and we scout that our opponent opened either Stalker or Adept. We will be changing up our plan a little bit. We'll only be getting a single Oracle, and I'll show you what you do instead of that second Oracle. So we open Stalker Probe. We scouted that both of his pylons were in the main base, so it's not a proxy. And this means that we don't need to worry too much about a one base all in, but we still need to worry about an initial 4 or 6 units. So instead of getting 2 oracles, most of the time I prefer only getting 1, getting faster into the tech and getting quicker into unit production. So the initial start will be the same. We get a Nexus, we get an extra pylon, we get our 1 oracle. Perhaps we can poke a little with our Stalker. We can see what kind of opening he has. Maybe he has Adept, maybe he has Stalker. Most of the time you'll be able to see that with the probe. Against Stalker, don't be too aggressive with these. But sometimes what you can do is you attack the Stalkers here, then you run back and you kind of pull the Stalkers to this area. And then as your Oracle flies in, he has no defenses at home. As you see, the timing is rather tight with where my Stalkers are positioned and that kind of stuff. So as you see, if against Stalker, Adept, we go, instead of second Oracle, we go Oracle, Stalker, Twilight Council, and another Stalker. So in total we'll get 4 units. Our Oracle will force him to stay at home for a little bit, but it's nice to have a good unit count for once your Oracle won't be able to do much damage anymore. He might move out. It is still a little bit risky, but you want to just get those extra units, and then once your Warp Gate finishes, your plan will be the same. You will have less potential damage with your Oracle because it's only a single one, but you'll have faster tech with the Blink, and you'll have faster early units, so you're a little bit safer. This is what I would recommend if your opponent does not open with Sentry Stalker. Now imagine we scout our opponent and we see no second pylon in their base, indicating that he's proxying. What we do in that case is we have a similar reaction to a Stalker or Adept opener, except instead of getting a Twilight Council, we'll open Robo, and perhaps we need to be more defensive. We still get a fast Nexus, we still get our second pylon, but from this point on it will change. As long as we don't see a Nexus, we will have to assume we're being one base all in. So ideally we'd want to pull our Stalkers back, always have a recall ready, get a Robo, and after our robotics facility we want to start unit production as soon as possible. So you see Stalker, only a single Oracle, we'll get a battery, and as long, in this case it's very important to keep our Oracle alive as well. As long as with our Oracle we don't see a nexus, we just keep adding more units and more batteries, as it means we're being one base all in. There's no need for us to build anything but units and batteries. Maybe sprinkle in a probe every now and again, but in general it's not very necessary to do. As long as you're on 27, 28 workers, you're going to be completely fine. You'll be way ahead in your way ahead of your opponent economically. So just keep building batteries and units, and the moment you see a nexus go down, what you do is you just start pro production. You have 2 nexuses already, so you should be way ahead of your opponent in that regard. Now, the moment your robotics facility finishes, you just start immortal production. You warp in a sentry and a zealot. You're about 26, 27 workers, and like I said, just keep adding batteries. Keep adding more immortals, perhaps add a prism so you don't get force fielded by sentries and you might lose your immortal in a silly way. And as long as you have batteries and an immortal, there's no real way for you to die. So yeah, that's basically gonna be it. It's gonna be the Proxy Oracle into Blink, unless you're getting proxied yourself. So I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and I see you boys next time. Bye bye.